Let's talk about the world that was created. Now, as a kid, I always loved going to zoos and aquariums. That's something that my parents would take me to all the time. My favorite thing. Who here loves going to aquariums? Is it just me? Am I the only nerd here? Okay, let's go. A couple of you guys. Now, I was so obsessed with it that as I grew up, I started wanting to make my own aquarium at home. You make what's called a reef tank with corals, rocks, fish, inverts, zooplankton, phytoplankton. It's a whole system. And by doing this, I understood that life has these very fine balances between these different things. I did monitor and track balances between elements and chemistry, magnesium, calcium, nitrates, phosphates, pH. All these different balances said to be just right. If just one of them was off, all the life would die off. Well, it's the same with the universe. It's a very finely tuned system. We see that there are these finely tuned constants balanced on a razor's edge. If they're just slightly off, life is impossible to be sustained on this planet. They can be slightly off. It's just very narrow, each of these. And it's not just that all of them could be slightly off. If just one of them was slightly off, life is impossible to be sustained on this planet. Let me give you an example. Take the gravitational force. If it were altered by 0.000, I'm kidding, I'm not going to say that whole number. 0.37 zeros, then followed by a 1. If you're altered just by that much, life cannot be sustained on planet Earth. What's that look like? You're to take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe, about 14 billion light years. If you put our gravitational force on a 1-inch marker, if you move that force by just 1 inch in either direction, life isn't possible. That's the level of fine-tuning I'm talking about. But that's just one constant. There's several other constants, and journalist Lee Strobel talked about this constant. He says, their level of fine-tuning is to precision of 1 part in 100 million trillion, a number 74 digits long. I mean, that's like one atom in the entire known universe. Now, over 122 constants, equally impressive in their fine-tuning, have been identified. Here are just a couple. We have the electromagnetic force constant, the strong and weak nuclear force constants, the right amount of water in the crust of the Earth, the perfect angular tilt of the Earth, the right planetary mass, and the mere existence of the planet Jupiter. We have the right concentration of sulfur, the balance between the centrifugal force and the gravitational force, the velocity of light, the perfect rotation time of the Earth, and the right amount of seismic activity, just to name a few. Each of these just as impressive in their fine-tuning, very narrowly defined to make life possible. Now, according to astrophysicist Hugh Ross, the odds of getting these 122 plus finely tuned constants, just as they are making the sustenance of life possible, is just 1 chance in 10 to the 138th power. To put in perspective how big that number is, there are only 10 to the 84th power elemental particles in the known universe. That's how improbable it is to get each of these things lined up just right to make life possible. Now, there are 3 possible explanations for this. There's chance, there's physical necessity, or there's design. Now, when we talk about chance being a cause, we don't mean that chance is literally doing it. Chance isn't some entity running out there kicking over barrels and stuff. It's talking about the probability of something actually happening. When I flip a coin, I have a probability 50-50 of getting heads or tails, but chance isn't what flips the coin. I flip the coin. But when we attribute something to chance, we're just talking about the probabilistic resources making something likely. And as we saw, this is incredibly unlikely. And when something unlikely happens, we rarely attribute it to chance. Let's imagine that I'm flipping a coin. I say, if I get heads and if I get heads, you pay me $1. If you get tails, I'll pay you $1. Now, if I flip it and I get heads, I flip it again, I get heads. I flip it 100 times, I get heads, you pay me $100. Or you can become skeptical that actually happened. You're going to say you got lucky? No. You're going to think I rigged the coin so that I keep getting that. How about if I get it 138,000 times? When it's incredibly improbable, we don't attribute it to chance. We attribute it to something else. We'll come back to that in a second. How about physical necessity? Well, physical necessity can explain it because that assumes that it had to be this way. It's defined by natural law. But the amount of water in the crust of the Earth could have been different. The angular tilt of the Earth could have been different. Many of these could have easily just been a little bit different, and life would be possible. So we can't attribute the fine-tuning to physical necessity. And lastly, design. We have an intuition that when incredible odds are overcome for a specific purpose, we rightly attribute it to design. In the coin flipping example, if that happened, you see there's a particular purpose, right? Me making money. Now, incredible odds were overcome for that to happen, so you would rightly think that I rigged the coin rather than I just got lucky. This is our design intuition. When incredible odds are overcome, making something possible as a desirable outcome, we rightly assume design. So that's the argument from fine-tuning. So just briefly stated, when incredible odds are overcome for a particular purpose, we rightly intuit design. Incredible odds were overcome, making human life possible. Therefore, we would rightfully intuit design rather than chance or fine-tuning.